collaboration with Cyclops Entertainment in conjunction with ABT presents Omnibus Unlimited, a roundtable discussion program on the paranormal, the supernatural, and the mysterious. Hello, everybody. I'm John Horrigan. Welcome to Omnibus Unlimited, a show where we try to bring man to a higher level of understanding, to break the parameters of mundane physics, looking to the new philosophy of a third millennium. Tonight, part 7 of our 10-part series on man-beast anthropoids. Tonight, though, we go to the man-beast anthropoid of Viet Nam. His name is Big Yellow. From Natural or Supernatural, a casebook of true unexplained mysteries by Martin S. Caidin. This one's called Monster Reality. For years, ex-U.S. Marine David E. Gower has had a nightmarish memory preying on his mind. It is so bizarre, so terrifying, that he has refused to discuss what happened to him in Vietnam with anyone. After great effort, he was persuaded finally to bring it to the consciousness to face the nightmare directly so that he might not spend the rest of his life hiding from it. This information was made available for the first time in the form of a letter for this book in the late summer of 1992. The reader is left to place this episode in whatever perspective seems most suitable. In all the intervening years since I left Vietnam, I have lived with a memory that terrified me when it happened and seems no easier to live with today. I've never spoken of what happened except to share with my buddies who were with me at the time and were just as shook up as I was. It happened more than 18 years ago when I was serving in Vietnam with the 5th Special Forces Group Marine Detachment. We had pulled duty north of the DMZ, that's the demilitarized zone, but that wasn't anything new to us. We'd been there before, and it wasn't an area where we would go ever again. Our job was simple. This is a search and destroy ambush mission. That was how we got the word, like going down to the local bar for a few beers. It sounded like that from our mission leader's voice, but he knew just like the rest of us that it was a hornet's nest and not a bar towards which we were headed. Well, up and out we went out on our PBR, which is our patrol boat river, and the delivery boys in the PBR deposited us on an embankment some 40 miles north of our starting point on some who-cares unnamed river in the middle of nowhere. It was what we called Far Out in East Jesus. The date was December 17, 1974. The 6-man group was under me. That means I was top dog, senior man, which also meant I'd usually be in the lead and was the most likely to get my head blown off or discover my stomach was being perforated. Specifically, we were to penetrate up to a distance of 1 mile into the jungle and then, at a pre-selected site, set up an ambush for the enemy with a medium machine gun. That weapon was my bar, the Browning automatic rifle, the BAR, solid and dependable and a bitch in combat. I had an M79 grenade launcher, 1 light machine gun, which was a Thompson subgun caliber 45, and 4 M16 rifles in our group, with a lot of ammo. If the ambush worked, then we might be able to catch an NVA, North Vietnamese Army, ground supply convoy. It would be moving with pack mules headed south to the DMZ to reinforce enemy troops there. Well, the PBR, the riverboat, was to take us upriver, drop us off, then move back downstream a distance of at least 300 yards, and wait under the cover of their camouflage nets and low-hanging branches. The plan was for them to wait for our signal by hand-carried radio, or, if they heard the uproar of a firefight underway, to get to us with heavier firepower. They'd blast their way upstream to the same point where they dropped us off. That gave us a definite rendezvous point. We'd be able to bring all our firepower together in a concentrated effort, and if we ran into more than we could handle, then would be the moment for what is officially called emergency evacuation, but which for us was, let's get the hell out of here now. Let me make it clear. We didn't have any rowboat to mess around with. In other words, ours wasn't the standard PBR. In addition to the 3 M60 machine guns on board, there was also a twin-mount 50 caliber machine gun in the forward deck with an anti-frag shield around it. And on the sides of the pilot house, we had belt-fed grenade launchers. And to top it off, on the afterdeck, we had a pair of 20mm rapid-fire cannon and anti-aircraft mounts. All in all, it was an absolutely devastating package of firepower. We could destroy a small town if we had to, with all the stuff that we had. Well, it was comforting to know we weren't the usually lightly armored floating target the enemy loved to work over. And to add just a bit more for extra value, we brought along one 60mm mortar. Now, that mortar was really a killing machine, but it had its own problems, which centered around how we were going to mount that thing on solidly to our boat deck. We let the PBR guys wrestle with that problem. If you want to stay alive in this business, you concentrate on what's going to be coming after you. Well, we went upriver in darkness by 1:30 a.m. in the morning, and we were at the ambush area. I told my troops to saddle up and that we were going ashore in 5 minutes. Right on time, the coxswain, or boat driver as the Marines called him, brought the PBR keel to the spongy soil with a touch that belied his bulk and ham-like fists. It was like an easy stop in an elevator. Well, we hit the shore with each of us carrying a light pack and the much heavier weapons. From the instant we touched ground, I was uncomfortable. The footing underneath was really a bitch. It was spongy, and in some areas the mud or ground beneath our feet was like the black earth found in a Louisiana bayou. This was the kind of sucking mud that could get us into trouble fast, impeding our movement just when we might need speed. Instead of going south as planned, I directed our team northward. The immediate bank was very steep with thick undergrowth, and the growth appeared to continue some distance inland. We didn't discover until later that it was thick, cloying jungle, not just riverbank growth. Out on the river, the moon had never been brighter. We were able to read by the silvery light. But once we got into the dense jungle, I could barely see 20 feet before us. We went through about 100 yards of this maze, and then it thinned a bit. And, to our strange surprise, we broke through into an unexpected clearing. Immediately, we began spreading out, going across open ground, bunched together. It's an invitation to disaster. I swear the hairs in the back of my neck felt like they were crawling. There was something strange about this area. I couldn't pin it down, but I was hair-trigger alert, much more so than usual. There wasn't a sound, and that was wrong. It seemed none of the animal life or even the usual plague of insects would come out in the open. I figured this was just my imagination, because what the hell could bother insects? Yet that sense of strange wouldn't go away. We all made sure our weapons were ready to fire in an instant. The feeling of strange steadily went to bad. Try to understand something about where we were and what was happening. In bush country, in Viet Nam, there are always bugs and small animals scurrying about. If they stop moving because you're passing close by them, they wait a few seconds until the danger is gone and very quickly resume their incessant night noise. But not now. Not in this area. It was like an abandoned cemetery. I motioned for Lance Corporal Terry to move up to scout the area a few hundred meters ahead of us. Terry had been raised in the back country in northern Georgia, and he was the perfect scout. He could have been an Indian, he was so quiet. I had seen him slip up to a tree and swat birds off limbs. They never knew he was coming. He could be scary at times, though, moving like a wraith. Right now, it was good to know he could move anywhere and not be detected. We'd been in this clearing about 20 minutes when I sent Terry ahead to scout for us. He was back in 5 minutes. "Man, there ain't nothing alive or moving within 30 meters of this damn clearing," he told me. "And there ain't no tracks I could find, no animal trails leading off into the bush, nothing. And nothing a human footprint would make. Not a single footprint anywhere. This place is crazy." "How do you feel about it?" I asked him. "Scary," came the answer. And that only heightened my own growing sense of fear. Something was desperately wrong. Terry didn't fear anything that walked, crawled, swam, or flew. Nothing. He was the best man I could ever want out in the bush. We'd had an agreement a long time that if one of us ever got wounded badly, the other would always carry or drag him out. You know, you had to see Terry in action to really understand this. He was only 5 feet 5 inches tall, and every inch was pure hate. He weighed 135 pounds, all of it spring steel and viciousness. We were a great team. He was tough to handle, but he also knew that if he got out of line, I'd shoot his young ass and leave him for lunch for the bugs. We weren't what you call buddies, but we absolutely counted on one another in combat. Terry was one of the finest Marines with whom I'd ever served in combat. By now, Terry had circled the entire clearing, his senses almost on fire. He was so hopped up with the feeling that something was wrong. He'd gone back through 250 meters of clearing and came back to me shaking his head. "Man, there ain't nothing here. Nothing that any human being ever left here either. And that ain't right." Everybody was starting to get edgy.
All Terry had found was a strange fecal deposit on the ground. He could tell the difference between the droppings of a goat and of a sheep, but this time he was baffled. "It don't fit," he said slowly. "It just doesn't fit." Fingers nervously caressed triggers as the minutes went by. Yet finding some strange droppings shouldn't have bothered anyone, not in this damn country where the jungle was full of everything from tiny mice to huge tigers. Well, we'd been within the clearing for perhaps 10 to 15 minutes when I heard, or detected, movement through the bushes well in front of us. I gave the high sign. Immediately, Terry moved about 20 feet to my right. Salazar slipped away behind me, slightly off to one side, about a distance of 10 feet. We'd learned long ago the hard way about silence in the bush. The lessons had been learned at the cost of friends now dead. So when we stopped, if we were near a rock, then we became a part of that rock. If near a bush, we became a part of that bush. If a person who wore glasses kept his face tilted downward, even on a bright night, he'd prevent any reflection that could be seen from a distance. By now we were sure we'd made the contact that we needed. We wanted to get our work done and get the hell out of there, head back south again. I want to explain we'd been in combat more times than we cared to remember. When we joined this outfit, the 5th group, we just gave ourselves up for dead. It made more sense than it seems. We'd all become intimate with the expression, "a dead man is hard to kill." And while that sounded like it had philosophical overtones, we never really knew what it meant. Until this night, that is. Whatever was out there in the bush, it wasn't trying to conceal its presence. There were a lot of them, whoever they were, or else we were dealing with something large and clumsy like a water buffalo. The animal, or group of enemy, was skirting the clearing just as we had, making sure not to expose itself. Finally, we saw unmistakable movement of the bushes as whatever was out there began to move straight at us. And when we saw what was coming, we'd gladly have settled for a tiger or even a whole damn herd of water buffalo. Because I'll never forget that night as long as I live. There were at least 3 of them. At least 3 that I saw. As gyrenes go, I'm a good-sized combat dude. I'm well over 6 feet 2 inches with plenty of hulk to go with the height. I say this because I judge the height of others very well. What appeared before us was a hell of a lot bigger than myself. I estimated a minimum of 7 feet tall, one at least 8 feet or taller, and the damn things were bright yellow. Yellow, all over them, with a crazed, diffused outline like watching a movie shot with a soft-focus lens. As they came closer, I could see they had large 3-digit hands, with what I swear were 4-inch claws on the ends. I couldn't make out the faces very well, with the outlines broken up the way they were, but to my best recollection, to which is added details specified by the other guys, the things appeared to have 2 eyes, some sort of nose slit on flat faces, and audio holes on the upper part of sides of their heads. That is, if you could imagine these things out of hell as having faces. One of the problems was that the yellow light that seemed to be generated by these, well, I'll just call them big yellows, the light was unholy, unmistakable. The more clearly I saw the big yellows, the more I began to realize they were huge, on the verge of being massive. They were moving slowly across the clearing, and as they began passing us, I realized I'd been holding my breath and I was going to suffocate if I didn't suck in some air. At the same time, I was afraid to, on the chance that such a sudden gasp of air would alert these things to our presence. I held out long enough, like the other guys, until the 3 big yellows moved back into the bushes. Terry and I moved forward carefully to inspect the ground for any tracks these things might have left. Sure enough, there they were. 3-toed tracks. Toes or digits, I don't know, but it was the same as the hands. After studying the tracks, we just stood there staring at each other for what seemed like long minutes. In reality, I guess it must have only been 20 seconds or so. I said to Terry, "Screw this, let's go back." So we started the return to our troops. At this point, I don't know what Terry was thinking, but my own mind was a blank. Geez, what we'd seen didn't exist. And they passed by almost close enough for us to touch. A child can accept things like Batman, Superman, and all kinds of superheroes, but not a thinking adult. We've all been taught since we were old enough to understand words that everything has to fit neatly within its own little pigeonhole. They, whoever or whatever they may be, also have to follow those rules. They may even be omnipotent, but rules are rules, and what we had just seen was not in the rule books. Common sense was shouting at me in the back of my skull that what I'd seen could not and did not exist. Finally, I shut down all the self-arguing and figured I'd better just get the hell out of here with everybody else while the going was good. We were just back into the bushes on the same side of the clearing we'd come out into during our trek from the boat. It was then that my blood turned cold. Those things, the big yellows, were coming back toward us, and this time at a dead run. The ground pounded as though elephants were in a stampede. "Back to the river," I shouted. "Salazar, get on that damn radio and tell him we're coming out hot." I'll tell you right out that I was a husky gyrene in damn good physical condition, and I was 200 pounds of conditioned muscle. I'll also tell you right out that never in my life did I ever move as fast as I did that night. With my full pack and weapons, I was running just as fast as my legs could move, and I think they were a blur. I went leaping over fallen trees and bushes like a hyped-up Olympic hurdler, but everyone else was in the lead, and I was bringing up the rear. Jesus! To hell with keeping quiet. We all knew we were running for our lives, and that if we stopped, something was going to have us for lunch. I know it's crazy. We had incredible firepower with us, and we were all veterans of combat, and we believed absolutely that, well, until this moment, we'd tackle anything on Earth and whip its ass all the way. It wasn't until later that I realized my thoughts had snagged on that phrase of anything on Earth. What I'd seen looking right back at me wasn't anything known on this Earth. I kept hearing a wheezing kind of growl getting closer and closer with every step. I knew if I didn't make a decision to turn and at least try to kill it with the BAR, which would chew a tiger to shreds, then this thing might just get us all. It would be starting with me, of course. And like I said before, the smell of death was all over us. And in those moments you could fall back on the canard that a dead man not only is hard to kill, but he sure hasn't got a thing to lose by what he does. For some reason, I knew I was going to die that night. And that was crazy. Fully armed, deadly, I was running away without having fired a shot. And I flat knew I was going to die. It was like an invisible arrow had smacked into my brain with that message. It was so strong. Then instinct and training, and maybe long-time bad manners, took over, and I figured I'd start doing some damage of my own. I always had that bar cocked and locked. I always had a round in the chamber and the weapon on safe and carried at high port arms. That is, while running, it was almost chest-high around the front of my body. Another completely crazy thing happened. I swear, I could feel this thing's hot breath on my back. But that was impossible. I was wearing a full pack at the time, so... Then the moment came. I thought, this is it, man. And I cut left as hard as I could and spun around and promptly fell on my ass. But my weapon was up to my chest, almost to my shoulder, and almost on target. The big yellow had turned with me. There was a swishing sound where a deadly set of claws ripped right through where I would have been had I kept running. I mean literally that those massive arms and claws were stirring up a wind in the still air of the jungle. But now I was on target, the weapon off safe, and I moved into a half-rise position. Instantly, I felt better when my trigger finger closed. I was less than 25 feet from the thing when I fired. I couldn't miss. I was an experienced sniper, and I'd been through special schools and special forces training at Camp Lejeune, where I'd proved my ability long before this moment. In short, I was dead on. Big Yellow was still full on its feet after taking a direct hit from a .30 caliber round from a machine gun. By now, I was standing, and the thing was facing me. I thought I could make out some kind of fangs like the larger canines of some large dog, but with the wildness of the moment, I won't swear to details like that. But I'll never forget those snake-like eyes and canines. That moment will forever be in the nightmares I've had since that day. Like I said, it was as if something penetrated my mind just as my round had slammed into Big Yellow. What I said after getting Big Yellow with a direct hit and that thing not even bothered was, I was told later, some award-winning profanity. We stood like that, a timeless moment. Then it started after me again, making that snuffling kind of growling sound. But I swear, I'd had enough. There I was, in a gloomy jungle, this kind of eternal twilight having blasted this creature, and it still starts moving towards me again. Now I know why I just stood there staring open-mouthed at it. That can't be true. Of course I know why I did that. I just could not believe that anything that breathed could withstand a 30-06 round up close. I always loaded my magazines myself for anything weird we might run into. The first round was a 30-06 armor-piercing round, my second was a spire point, the third was a boat tail, and then back to armor-piercing, then lead-nose jacketed, and more armor-piercing rounds. Any man loaded like that is a killing machine of the worst kind, and that was me. What that kind of mag load you can bring down is anything. I think Big Yellow might have stumbled a bit, but only once when I'd hit him dead on. So I figured this mother was going to eat everything I had to offer. Like 180 grains of jacketed 30 caliber rounds, and my finger came back on the trigger. I had 20 rounds for that big dude, and I was dead on, point-blank range. And I squeezed off round after round, and I hit that son of a bitch again and again and again. I didn't jerk the rounds like a man frightened as badly as I might do, because I was pissed. Instinct and training always pays off, and at this business I was all professional. I put each round carefully into Big Yellow's chest, and I saw it jerk backward, at times convulsively, with each new hit, and I was counting off every round. Now that I was firing, all fear had left me. I was killing, and I was never bothered with fear when I was blasting away. It was pure killing drive, and those rounds could have pulped the head and the horns of the biggest damn water buffalo that ever lived, and it would have left it a headless water buffalo even before it went down. I mean, I had firepower, and I let everything go into him, and he just kept coming. It just stood there, twitching, while I pumped round after round, every one of them dead on into its chest. On round 19, I switched to fire at its head. I figured I'd put one right between its eyes into its brain. The bar just clicked. Good God, I had a dead primer on that round. I figured I was dead. Big Yellow was starting after me as though I had never even touched it. There was only one thing left for me to do, and that was to run like hell. I ran, and I ran, faster than before. The bar couldn't stop that thing. Get the hell out. My own mind was just screaming at me. I was heading for where I knew the patrol boat would be out in the river, and there it was, just pulling away from the riverbank when I saw it through the brush. That was an immense relief, but very short-lived. I could hear Big Yellow gaining on me. I'd already figured on going swimming, which is the same as hurling myself as far as I could into the river to get to the PBR if it was off-bank. But when I saw the boat right before me, I ran even faster and then leaped wildly for the deck. I felt something go smack at one shoe when I leaped. When I hit the deck with a crash, I fell on my left side with my legs tangled in against the frag shield of the 50 caliber. It's amazing how fast you can judge things when you're terrified. I took barely a second to realize that I was back on the PBR and Big Yellow was still coming after me. I yelled to the crewman to aim at the area with his 50s, right where I'd come through the bush. Aim! Open fire, damn it, now! I ran back to one of those powerful 20mm cannon anti-aircraft guns, all the time screaming to the coxswain to get the hell out into the river. I was only distantly aware that there was already a gunner on the big 20mm, but without thinking I grabbed him to hurl him out of the way so I could handle that weapon myself. My BAR was still on the deck, useless to me. Then, except for engine roar, water sounds, and muttering, it was amazingly quiet. Everybody had their weapons trained into the brush in case those things decided to come on over and play. The lead creature stayed concealed, for a while. We were going downriver, but still inside of that area when we come dashing back to the PBR. Suddenly, 7 of us watched the riverbank area shimmer. A great spray of yellow expanding outward like a silent explosion of yellow fog. We were stunned. We couldn't make out if they'd all come to the edge of the clearing or if there was only one. But it was nighttime. It was dark, damn it, and we were watching an incredible yellow glow. No way to tell any numbers of things. And we didn't care. We wanted out and we went to full throttle and everybody kept their weapons trained on that yellow shining fog until we rounded a river bend and just kept on going. One of the boat crew asked if we'd seen that tiger that appeared on the bank where we were moving out. I never knew of a tiger that would run into heavy gunfire and keep coming. Those of us who'd been ashore looked at one another in long silence, and we knew better than to make a report of what we'd actually seen. The head shrinkers would be all over us like fleas on a bleeding dog. Tiger would do fine, thank you. One or two of my patrol just nodded. Yeah, tiger. Now I had time to reflect. Tensions were easing among the crew, but I noticed they still had their weapons at the ready to open fire on just about anything. You talk about being spooked, and that's what was us, man. But at least I couldn't think now. I went over the details in my mind while everything was fresh, over and over again. Then we heard a wild animal roar from where we'd been. And I'll tell you right now, I've seen tigers, I've heard tigers, I had face-to-face meetings with tigers, and that was no damn tiger. The sound made me stumble on the boat deck. I looked down at my boots. The heel on the right boot was missing. Salazar saw me staring at my boot. His gaze followed mine, and then he went pale. Powerful claws had torn the heel from the boot. I sort of retreated into myself on the PBR until we got back to Camp Bearcat. Needless to say, I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. That face straight out of hell, the claws and the savagery, and that inhuman yellow glowing light. Oh, it was all too much, man. I didn't sleep for 4 days straight until I stumbled about like a zombie. Finally, on the 5th day, I passed out from physical exhaustion. Incredibly, no nightmares. When I awoke, I knew that thing wouldn't be coming after me in the dark. But until then, I was absolutely convinced I was going to have to fight that thing to the death, that we were joined together in some unholy struggle. Then, it just went away. Well, for a time, I even tried to rationalize that the whole thing had been a dream. No way, it was all too stark. There were all the other witnesses. There was the power and shock of snappings out of the round after round with the BAR. And then there was that missing right heel that had been torn off and the gouge marks from claws that, by actual measurement of my boot, were 2 3/4 inches wide. Sometimes a different realization sets in slow. There was a thing out there that was capable of taking 18 30-06 caliber ammunition rounds, armor-piercing, jacketed lead, everything, right into its chest, and all it did was sort of twitch a bit and grumble, and then come hell-bent for leather after me at a dead run. There's nothing that exists in this world that can do that. We 7 never spoke of it again. We told a few close friends at first. They either didn't believe us or they didn't want to believe us. So we said to hell with them and everything else, and until I got pushed and threatened by one of my best friends who's authoring this book, I figured I'd never again talk about it. And the only reason I'm doing it now is that things that I've seen and learned with this friend can widen your eyes as big as saucers. I trust him. That's why you're reading this story now. I'm the only one left of that patrol. The other 6 are gone, and they took their secret with them to the grave. We left 5 of them dead in the paddies of Nam. The other one died in a car crash back in the States. Hell of a way to go after being one of the only 2 combat survivors of our Marine outfit. But for years, keeping my reasons to myself, I've tried to find some reference to anything that could have tied into what I've called Big Yellow. For years, I've studied every book that applied in every library of every ship to which I was assigned, at Marine bases, at terrific government research facilities. I went after everything from anthropological to the supernatural. Then, just a few years back, I came straight up in my seat. I'd finally found something. I was studying a book titled The Tomb by F. Paul Wilson, and I was amazed. Wilson's descriptions of strange and terrible creatures describe what I'd seen in Viet Nam almost perfectly. I wondered if he had ever seen them personally, so I wrote him, tried to call him, badgered his publisher to contact him, but zero, nothing. But now, for the reasons I've given here, I am here, and that's what's happened, and I still go icy cold of what I think of the savagery and the ability of a creature to take 18 rounds of perfectly aimed point-blank fire into the chest from a bar. Neither human nor animal can withstand that. You see, that kind of firepower just doesn't hit a physical body and tear inside. It makes a 9mm auto fire, which is a hell of a weapon like a BB gun in comparison. The muzzle velocity of the bar and the variety of ammo tears out great chunks of flesh, explodes bones. In short, it freaking destroys. So it wasn't, of course, human. And I'll tell you right now, it wasn't animal as we know the world. So I don't give a damn what bones they found in Asia or what models the anthropologists have built, no matter what resemblance is involved. You ever see a Kodiak bear? Well, they get up to 1,500 pounds, and they make a grizzly, by comparison, look about the size of a large dog. That bar, with its ammo, would have blown any Kodiak into bits, pieces, chunks, and bloody spray.
Big Yellow just twitched, grunted, and came on after me. Whatever it is, and I've begun to learn just how possible is this concept they call the doorways, it also glows in the dark. It has some physical features no animal has. Well, I can't tell you any more than what you've read. But it isn't and never will be called natural. Well, that concludes tonight's program on Big Yellow, a man-beast anthropoid of Viet Nam. And a Marine outfit takes on this Big Yellow and runs away from it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this show. My name's John Horrigan. The name of this program is Omnibus Unlimited. This has been part 7 of a 10-part series on man-beast anthropoids. So next time you're out in the dense jungles or you're camping in some mountainous area, keep an ear to the ground and you're back to your tent. Until next time, I'm John Horrigan. Good luck. Omnibus Unlimited is a production of Cyclops Entertainment and the Crescent Moon Club.